Fertility prices are rising to an all-time high. Commodity prices are low. You've got to watch your bottom line, particularly on phosphorus, and we're going to give you tips on how you can do that. This is a great episode on saving money without sacrificing yield and keeping your fertility levels up. This episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
It's XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, cutting your learning curve and improving your farming operation every week. This episode of the Cutting the Curve podcast is brought to you by BASF, creating innovation to help farmers do the biggest job on earth. And now, let's get ready to learn with your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve. I got a great one for you today. Got Temple Rhodes coming at you from Maryland. I got Rebekah. I think the name is Muench. Say your last name, Rebekah.
It's Muench. You are correct.
Rebekah Muench, and she is with Concept Agritek. And we said, you know what, Temple, what's something that people should learn right now? We're recording this in the middle of October of 2025. You are looking at decisions on how you're going to crop in 2026. We know that MAP and DAP are very, very prohibitively expensive. I don't buy fertilizer the way you guys do, but certainly I keep up with all of the headlines, and I'm seeing this, and I know this is going to be a real concern. Turns out you might be over-applying phosphorus. Maybe you've got phosphorus that's already available and you're not tapping into it. Maybe you just need to change your mindset and reverse some of the things you've always done, change up what you've always done, and you will still be in the black in 2026. That's what we're covering here today. Temple, you brought up this topic. I like it. You said MAP and DAP are really, really expensive. I've got to change stuff. Before we hit record, I said, what are you going to change? This is not easy.
No,
one of the big fertility sources.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but there is a tremendous amount of phosphorus that's already in a lot of our soils, and we just got to learn how to get some of that out. And it's really about time management. You know, we try to manage everything out. And we talk about spoon feeding all the time. Well, keep in mind, you know, if we're going out there and spreading, you know, DAP in the spring ahead of the planters, and in my case, you know, for instance, we're spreading fertilizer right now. Well, I'm actually not spreading fertilizer, but had some guys call and said, you know, they want to know what their options were, like what I think they should do ahead of this wheat crop, because they went out and got wheat crop prices just for a little bit of fertility, spread dry fertilizer, and they're up to like $120 an acre. And in reality, it's not a lot of plant food. And I said, you know, maybe you guys need to take a different stance, kind of step back from this just a little bit. You know, Rebekah brought something up that I tell a lot of people, you know, when you're looking at a 250 bushel corn crop, there's an awful lot of phosphorus that's in that. Can we break that down? Can we get that back into the soil? Yeah, that's one of the things that we can do. And Rebekah probably should chime in on that here in a minute. But there's so many other ways that we can do this. And we put a lot of this fertility out there, and as soon as we put it into the ground, realize that there's no efficiency to the product whatsoever. I mean, at best, you know, pounds of phosphorus that we're getting out there per acre, we're getting maybe 20%. That's not very efficient. Mm. And then we put it in the soil that either is high in aluminum, high in iron, high in calcium, and then all the rest of that phosphorus that we put out there gets locked up into the soil. And we're only getting 20% out. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to go put $100 in an account, but I can never take anything else out but $20. Like, what do we keep putting this into?
Yeah, so Rebekah, I think that's the big one.
We said we're going to get some things back out.
We said we're going to have to change thinking, but really, of all, and it took me working with XtremeAg to even learn this, that like only 1/3 of applied nitrogen actually gets in the crop. Less than that on phosphorus. So we're spending an exorbitant amount of money right now when things are obviously very tight to even below break even to get this low amount. And I get it. There's some things that are, you know, agronomically impossible or at least difficult. But this seems like as Kelly always says, the low-hanging fruit. We're putting a whole bunch of phosphorus out there and we're getting very little of it into the actual plant. We gotta change this.
Yeah, and I think there's a bunch of different ways that you can kind of focus on doing this, right? So the one thing that I've been kind of pushing towards guides this season is talking about residue management. What can you do with your residue in order to get some of that phosphorus that's tied up in your stover available. So a lot of people use, residue management products. I know we have one. It's called Residue RX. I'm not going to go deep into detail, but a lot of those products have, your nitrogen fixers, your phosphorus mineralizers. They also have potassium solubilizers. So in accordance to all your NP and K, you can actually get quite a few units back. Phosphorus specifically speaking, you go put a product like this out and you can release up to 23 pounds of phosphorus. So, in comparing that to maybe DAP, say you only get a percentage of that, right, released. Say you get 15 pounds of your phosphorus released. And at about $1.89, almost $2 now of DAP per pound, that's almost $30 an acre that you could be reducing in your dry budget for the next season using DAP or MAP, just from releasing it in your stover.
You can reduce DAP or MAP because you're going to grab 30 pounds. $30, 15 pounds. And that's not even as much you said. You used a number before up to 23 pounds, which at $2 is $46. Well, this could be a year where $46 could be a difference between losing and breaking even.
Exactly.
Well, the other side of that, Rebekah, is like that's an organic form of phosphorus versus a synthetic form of phosphorus. What's the efficiency in between those two?
So I would say, if you're using any of your inorganic forms of phosphorus, so if you're going to go out and put out something that's high in poly too, polyphosphorus has to be cycled through your soil. So it's got to be cycled into an ionic form in your soil solution by microbes and mineralized in order to get used. So having phosphorus from a residue breakdown product that's already mineralized cuts out about 2 steps in the cycling process of phosphorus already. So I'd say the efficiency is probably 20% from just straight up applying polyphos, and now you're getting it cycled from your soil already, and that's probably almost up to 80% in some cases of efficiency.
Yeah, so it's a completely different source. Not only that, we're not supposed to be sitting here talking about a product, but like one of the things with this product that she's talking about, it actually feeds the microbes that are out there in your soil. So it's kind of like supercharging that whole system.
The product Residue RX. So first off, residue management in the old days used to mean a moldboard plow. And we know that that's not, by the way, Rebekah, I know you're younger than us. Google that. For people your age and younger, Google that, because I know you don't know what that means. So anyway, that was completely wrong. And these products now, like Residue RX, breaking down what is in there, and a bunch of the companies we work with have these residue management products. Like Temple said, it does more than just. It does it the right way. We're not using tillage. So that's the cool part. And what about the release? Like Temple just said something about the release. Is there a component to it with that?
Again, it all has to do with the microbial breakdown. So it's a little hard to describe the entire pea cycle without maybe confusing some people. But I would just focus more or less on doing it the proper way. Because I know a lot of people, you just mentioned moldboard plowing, and I might be young, but I'm not that young, Damian. So you got to remember, I'm a Minnesota girl at heart, and there's a lot of moldboard plowing up there. So realistically, when you're going and just disking stover under or even burning it, you're getting the improper breakdown of that. And especially when you're doing that, you're also volatilizing or gassing off about the top 4 to 6 inches in your soil of the nutrients that are there as well. So really, you're losing a whole lot more nutrients by doing it the improper way. And gassing off, those 4 to 6 inches hold a lot of your pounds. When you think about phosphorus specifically, when you take a soil sample and you look at your Bray 1 or your Bray 2 or your Malex, and there's a lot of pounds tied up there. And you could be losing a whole lot of that by not utilizing the right practices.
Got it. So, all right. So we talked about breakdown and residue. So let's go back to reducing our phosphorus purchase. Temple, if we're only getting 20% of it used, then the first answer is that's why I got to put it out there, because if I don't put enough out there, given that only 20% gets up there. The other way to look at that is, why not just figure out a way to get more than 20% utilization? And I know from working with guys like you and XtremeAg, phosphorus doesn't move. Can we just cut back? Can we just cut back and better and put it more where it needs to be? Cut back by half and try and put it where it needs to be next to the plant?
Yeah, you can. You can really cut back a lot if you start looking at banding fertility. if you ban fertility, we cut back at least 40 to 50% just because we're right there on top of that row and in a, a very close form. We do a lot of that. But you really need to look at doing it as a program where you stretch it out versus, spread it all out there one time and you're done with it. But you're only getting 20% of it, and that's good that you're getting something, but then the rest of it's locked up in the soil. You got to have a way to, one, you want to try to unlock some of those things and get it back into the plant. You want to try to do that. But the other things you want to do is keep in mind that most plants, corn, soybeans, and wheat, most of the needs for that phosphorus nutrition is in the reproductive stages, but yet we put it out all the way in the beginning and we're giving it all that time to lock up in our soil. That's why we're not getting the efficiency of it. So you can improve efficiency just by putting it on at the right time and letting it take it up into the plant instead of getting it, letting it get away and letting it get locked up. There's different ways to do that, and a lot of that can be done foliar nutrition. A lot of that can be done late season Y drop, and get closer to those areas of influence versus throw it out there. We used to call it blow and grow. I don't know how to say it any nicer, but I mean, it literally was, let's blow it all out there and then we're going to grow it. You always says, just fling it everywhere. Isn't that what you always says, Damian? Let's just fling it. Let's just fling it. So I think that we need to do a better job of managing. We're trying to do the best job of managing our finances, and we try to be efficient with everything else. Why exactly aren't we efficient with our fertility needs when that plant needs it? Why are we not that way?
Yeah. So there's the point of, maybe on DAP and MAP, we know that those are broadacre flinger type products. Why not just cut back on since they're expensive, cut back on them and then figure out a way to get it in there? Those thing is, Rebekah, you might be saying, yeah, but it's either spend it now or spend it later. What's the answer?
I think what Temple said, to be honest, is spacing it out at correct timings or more accurate timings is probably the best way to go about it. Instead of flinging a bunch out of there, if you think about at plant, right? If you were to put down as much fertility as you wanted to at plant, usually your plants, can only take up so much because they're young. They're in the seedling stage. But not only that, that fertilizer really, even with being broken down, that really only lasts available for around 6 to 8 weeks. So, I mean, all that fertilizer you're putting out at plants, not necessarily going to be utilized. So I think spreading it out throughout the season is probably the best thing you can try to do.
Favorite statement that our man Matt Miles made a long time ago, and it really was good. It was illustrative. That means it illustrated the point. He said, I got a baby sitting in the high chair. Actually, maybe I had the high chair. He says, you put enough food in front of that baby for the next year, and clearly the baby can't eat it all, and then it goes bad, and it's just a waste, and you didn't really help the baby. Now imagine you putting it out there for a lifetime. That's kind of what we're talking about here. You put all this stuff out there at time of plant, and it goes to waste, doesn't get there. All right, give me another tip on how I can reduce my spend on pea, Rebekah.
See, I think the next thing would really be focusing on your source of P, your source of phosphorus that you're going to be using throughout the season. So again, we've been talking about maybe cutting back on your MAPs and DAPs, moving from something that's maybe, an 80-20 breakdown of polyphosphate to orthophosphate, maybe moving that to something that's a little bit more 50-50 or a closer ratio can also give you a lot more availability within the season. So what polyphosphate does in the soil is basically it's a lot more unavailable, right? It's chelated. You have to have microbial breakdown in order to get that phosphorus available. Now your orthophosphorus is more or less used as that kind of instant reaction phosphorus that's going to be taking it up immediately. So having a ratio that's not so extreme like an 80-20 and maybe moving towards a 50-50 or even a 60-40 can give you a lot more efficiency early season or whenever you're going to be applying it to sustain you a little bit longer throughout the season.
You going to change your source, Temple?
I've already changed all my sources. I kind of, I'm not saying that we still don't need MAP and DAP. Maybe we just don't need as much upfront as what we originally thought. Cut back there, put it where it should be. And we've changed a lot of it. We've gone into a lot of liquid fertility, and we've gone away from the dry. There's a lot of different reasons that we've done that, but here's one for you, Rebekah, and you can tell me why this happens. But I haven't had any dry fertility on my farms for 3 years now, and I've changed to this no program. And in some years, if it's a droughty conditions and it quits raining, we can't. We really can't afford to put on anymore. So, we can kind of spoon feed our finances as we spoon feed that plant. We can ramp up when we're getting rain. We can cut back when we're not getting rain.
Right.
And it's changed the way that we spend money, and it's made us think differently. We're raising the plant, not raising the acre. That's kind of how we've started to think about this. And we've changed this for a while now. What I don't understand, and Rebekah, I'm going to need you to chime in on this. Why is it that after 3 years, we do soil testing twice a year, every year, and we average the two. We do one in the spring and one in the fall, and then we kind of average them out. Why is it that over 3 years, because everybody's going to say, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to mine your soil, you're going to mine your soil. And I agree with them a certain amount. But what I don't understand is over the last 3 to 5 years, we've cut back on dry fertility, but yet my levels are either the same or they've actually raised up just a hair on phosphorus and potassium. Like, tell me why that's happening. Is it because we've learned how to break down residue and we're getting some of that stover broke down into the soil profile, or what is going on here?
So I think it goes back again to that pea cycling, right? So I'd say a lot of it probably has to do with you breaking down your stover more efficiently, right? You're putting a lot more of that mineralized pea back into your soil. So you're showing more pounds in your soil in those top 4 to 6 inches when you're soil sampling. Another reason could be also that there's a lot of mineral phosphorus already tied up in our soils already, right? When you think lower than that 4 to 6 inches, and you start thinking about what's actually deep down in your soils, that rock phosphate. So some of that mineral phosphorus actually goes through a cycling process with the microbes that are already there as well, and it gets weathered. And that's what that process of weathering basically brings it back up into your soil solution from year to year. So that's also another point that could maybe explain that.
Well, I was kind of thinking maybe it's because my soil health every year is getting a little bit better and a little bit better. There's more microbial activity out there than was in years previous. So is that part of what's happening out here, that, my soil balance or my soil condition, is getting into a better health?
By the way, that brings up we should do another episode just on that. But the point is, all these recommendations, and this is the thing, Rebekah, I know I jumped in here. You probably went to an ag school like I did, and then some of the stuff they're still doing and recommending is from the 60s. And what if we don't need all this stuff? And what if it turns out better earthworm activity or doing steps to preserve organic matter and extreme reductions of tillage make it so that we just don't need the level of phosphorus because of every other component? And I know you're going to say, yeah, but the plant still needs this much. We know scientifically, whatever. So what's your thoughts on that?
So I think, we might be better at what we're doing, right? So a lot of those practices can help improve our soils. But I think another portion of that is also just balancing your soil in general, right? So I know that Temple spent a lot of time looking at soil tests, trying to compare everything and making sure that some of his ratios are a little bit more accurate, that his calcium and mag are not antagonizing each other. So the more balanced that you get your soils over these, next 5 to 10 years, because it does take a long, long time to focus on that, right? I think the more balanced that your soils are, the more efficient you are when you're using those fertilizers. So that's why you're seeing a lot more pounds in your soil. That's probably why you're seeing a lot better efficiencies. So I think overall, the more balanced that you get, probably the less dry that you could be putting out and maybe moving to a more liquid system. Now, I'm not going to say that you can completely get rid of dry fertilizer. I don't think anyone out here believes that, but you'll still need to use it depending on, maybe something that you've been low in.
All right. So, Temple's point, let's just talk about the things that you think that might help you. Okay. Increase organic matter to make it so you can apply less phosphorus, Temple?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you can increase organic matter, it helps absolutely everything. If you can improve CECs, it improves absolutely everything. So I'll give you a something that happened to me, and I talked to Bert Regan about this a while ago. For 30 years, we've been in a nutrient management plan. For 30 years, we've taken soil samples. So I have 30 years of data that state that I've had a cover crop on it for 30 years because it's been incentivized by the state of Maryland. So, what do they tell you all the time? Plant cover crops. It's going to improve your organic matter. It's going to improve soil health. I think that it does all that. It's going to increase CECs. It tells you all these things. Well, until we started breaking down residue, as far as like stover behind the combine. And then when we burned off in the springtime ahead of planting, and then we broke down that residue, meaning the cover crop residue, we never increased in organic matter. We never increased in CECs over 30 years. But the last 5 of those 30 years, all of a sudden, when I cut back on fertility and I start to learn how to break down residue, all of a sudden, all my numbers are coming up. And all of a sudden, my CECs are high, my organic matter is high, my P levels are high, my potassium levels are high. And I'm like, so anytime you can increase organic matter, it improves absolutely everything.
Got it.
I definitely agree with that too, because I mean, the more matter that you have in your soil system, your organic matter acts as a chelator naturally. So it's going to chelate a lot of your micronutrients. It's going to chelate a lot of your macros as well, making them so they're a lot more available for uptake in the root zone.
All right, Rebekah, you gave me a couple of ideas on how to reduce PE, and to the guys that are listening to this and the gals that are listening to this, you said residue management. We talked about then changing your source. What's another one? And I threw out organic. I threw out doing everything you can for soil health and organic matter. That was mine. So you know what? I'll put an asterisk there. That was a Damian contribution, which go ahead.
That means
Rebekah.
he actually sat up and paid attention today.
I'd say another big one is honestly trying to focus on your soil pH is going to help you reduce your phosphorus. So I know a lot of people are obviously not near neutral that we want to be for those soils. A lot of times when you have really, really acidic pHs, anything that's going to be below a 6 starts getting into that acidic zone, and you're going to have a lot more issues with aluminum and iron in your soils.
So Rebekah, hang on a second. You said that soil pH below 6, which is acidic, ties up my P because you said something, and then go ahead. You said something about aluminum and something else. So go ahead from there, please.
Yeah, so with pHs under 6, they're very, very acidic. So that means a lot of your metals in your soil are going to be antagonizing your phosphorus. So your aluminum and your irons are going to be tying up that phosphorus so it's unavailable. They have a very, very high affinity for your phosphorus because if you think about phosphorus as charged in the soil, it's either a -2 or it's a negative. And when you think about aluminum iron, they're also a +2 charge. So that means they're going to have a high affinity for that phosphorus and they're going to tie it up immediately. Now, on the other hand, when you go into a calcareous soil, so a soil that's really
calcareous soil, for the person that says, I know that I don't know what that means, but I'm embarrassed to ask, maybe that person's me.
It just means you're very high in calcium. So your pH is above that 7.75. That's a calcareous soil, high in calcium. So that calcium also has a +2 charge that's going to pull at that phosphorus and tie it up almost immediately.
Okay, so if I want to reduce my applied phosphorus, I just really need to shoot very desperately for the 6 to 7 pH.
That's what I'd say. I think trying to get in that near neutral and that 6.5 range is probably going to be your most efficient for any fertilizers, and especially for phosphorus.
And then somebody's going to say, well, okay, so I didn't spend it on phosphorus, I just spent it on lime.
That's true. But there's so many different ways to...
I thought you were going to say, but lime sticks around for a longer period of time, though, right?
It does, but it takes a long time also to adjust your pHs. So it is a long battle, and I think a lot of people maybe don't want to focus their time on doing that. They want to focus on the here and now. But over time, having that lime or adding that elemental sulfur, whatever you have to do to adjust that pH is going to be better for you in the long run because you're going to have more nutrient availability in the future.
Okay. All right, Temple. She's going to have you do residue management with products, not with tillage. She's going to have you, and we saved $30 to $46 right there because we're capturing phosphorus already there. We're going to change up our sources. You're already doing that. A lot of the people that are listening to this probably aren't. And so what I really got from that was we're going to go from a polyphosphate to an orthophosphate, and you talked about some different numbers with that. Pretty much, give me the Cliff's Notes? I'm sorry. You don't know what Cliff's Notes are either. They shorten version on the source. What else do I need to know?
I would say that if these guys out here and gals listening to this, if they really do want to start to cut back, just cut some out at the beginning and then try to find a place to put some type of phosphorus closer to reproduction, whether it's corn, soybeans, or wheat. It doesn't matter which one. Just, you don't have to put the whole load out front. And if we want to cut back, that's a great place to stop. And, cut 40, 50, 60% out, and then find a different way to put it in, closer towards reproduction, because that's where it really ramps up. 60 to 70% of phosphorus needs in all three of those crops are needed in reproduction. It drives energy.
And we're putting it out there at germination. We're putting it out there before it even germinates. And then the soil pH, which, by the way, this is the first. Thank you, Rebekah. It's the first I've ever heard this. In 4.5 years of working with XtremeAg and doing these kinds of interviews, it's the first time I found out that acidic ties up P. I did not know that. All right. Anything else, Rebekah, on how to reduce P without reducing yield?
Those are the top three things for me that come to mind right off the bat.
Do you think that most people are still over applying phosphorus, and this is going to be the year finally where they're like, oh, crap, I got no choice but to cut back and change it up? Is it finally the economics are going to force the better environmental stewardship of this?
I think that's a big driver of it, honestly. I think with, just some of the market volatility in the prices, and obviously the volatility of the fertilizer prices here that we've been talking about all day, I think that really will start to maybe drive a little bit more of some solution-based thinking here with farming.
I like it. Temple, last word.
I tell you what, I think that we covered it all. I can't give you any more pointers, but other than try it.
I think your big one. The big takeaway there is 70% of the phosphorus need happens at reproductive, and you're putting it out there before the seed even goes in the ground, let alone during vegetative stage.
And keep in mind, we're only getting up to, not. Oh, we get exactly 20%. You're getting up to 20%. Depending on your soil, it could be less than 20%.
His name's Temple Rhodes, Chestnut Manor Farms out there in Centerville, Maryland, and her name is Rebekah Muench, a Minnesotan transplanted to Monticello. We call it Monticello, not Monticello, because it's not where Thomas Jefferson lived, and that's in northwestern Indiana. Rebekah, if they want to learn more about the company you work for called Concept Agritek, where do they go?
You can find us at conceptagritek.com on our website. And we also have Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the social media platforms. We're under Concept Agritek for just about everything. And
Agritek ends with a K, not a CH. There you go. Her name's Rebekah. His name's Temple. My name's Damian Mason. Thanks for joining us here on this episode. We've got hundreds of videos just like this, Cutting the Curve episodes with information you can use on your farm. Hundreds and hundreds of videos that guys like Temple shoot out in the field. Short videos, educational, informational, that you can use to farm better. And also, we have our granary show, which Temple's been here a number of times. Yep. You can find all that at XtremeAg.farm. The granary show is shot right here at my on-farm hangout facility, where we talk about everything from the personal to professional and everything in between with the farm guys. Go check out all of our stuff at XtremeAg.farm. Also, do go to YouTube and hit subscribe. Doesn't cost anything. We'd like to have more followers on the XtremeAg YouTube channel. So next time, thanks for being here. I'm Damian Mason with XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cutting the Curve. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.farm for more great content to help you squeeze more profit out of your farming operation. This episode of the Cutting the Curve podcast is brought to you by BASF, creating innovation to help farmers do the biggest job on earth.